This video is about how humans can colonize Mars without using incubating devices. Basically, you get young women and at least one guy, they go to Mars, they give birth to children, and the mothers stay for a short period of time, like up to 2 years, and then they return back to Earth to return to normal gravity. And then the children would remain on Mars. Let me explain. Humans cannot survive well in lower gravity environments because it damages your bones. It makes your bones brittle, which means that when you fall down and you can't get up, you will break your legs. And there are gravitational devices. You've seen them where they spin around and the guy sits in it and his face presses against the thing. Or maybe you've been on them at the amusement park. So they have devices like that. You know, everybody gets in that when you go to sleep, and it keeps your G forces relatively normal. Because your G force, as far as I know, it only has to be one, a G force of one. On Mars, it's like maybe 0.6, 0.65. So the women and a few men are going to go to Mars. They're going to give birth to children who will grow up on Mars and hopefully evolve. Like, they're probably going to have issues with their growth, but chances are they will survive. They're going to have problems, but they will survive probably, definitely. So you go with enough people that are not related to each other. Let's say, I don't know if 20 mothers is enough, but let's say it's 20 mothers because you can only go with so many people. Like, how big of a ship are you going to have? All the food you got to bring, for example. So the women would go with some men, and you would have doctors. They would have as many people trained doctors as possible. For example, you know, my cousin works in the baby ward where they lock them up if they're bad. No, she works in the place where they give birth to kids, to babies. In fact, when my sister had one of her kids, my cousin was there, probably observing her cry like a baby. So the babies would grow up on Mars. There's never been a movie depicting what might happen, and if there were, it would be completely false. So don't look for one. But the babies would grow up on Mars, the mother would return home, and the mother would survive on planet Earth and would communicate with the children virtually, which means you'd be sending video messages back and forth. Because it takes like 1,000 minutes or 1,000 seconds or whatever. And you'd have to have an educational system. So the kids would have no parents, which means that someone would have to volunteer to be there to raise the kids. And maybe if you had the gravitational device, maybe it would work. Maybe an adult human would be able to survive long term. The other option is you keep shipping in old people. They live in outer space for a couple of months, which won't destroy them that much. And when they get there, it's, you know, it's not zero gravity. It won't be so bad that they can't walk when they arrive on the planet. But you send old people and they just die there, and make sure they got mobility scooters, which means that you expect them to die within 4 to 6 years. It'd have to be like 65 to 70-year-olds. And it would be a long trip. Nobody wants to say, hey, would you like to go on a 3-month trip? Although when my father came to the United States, he came by boat. I'm sure it took a long time. And same with my grandfathers, you know, it wasn't a short trip. Because they only go like 20 knots. Boats only go like 20 knots. So that's how you would do it. You'd have to have a method of educating them and raising them. And you'd have to teach them to provide for themselves, meaning growing food, etc. Garages become really important. With garages, you have a lot of easy access to the outside world. You could just drive out. And you want your vehicles like your Jeep Cherokees, Rubicons, to have, the air pressure inside the vehicle, the solar panels, the backup fuel source, four-wheel drive, etc. So that is my plan. Obviously, there's another way to do it, which is to bring eggs and bacon. No, eggs and other items that if I say it, I'll get banned off of YouTube, of course. So you bring like the little baby people, and you put them in ice, and then you dip them in water until they're room temperature, and then you incubate them in a machine, which means you'd have to have dudes that know how to incubate, and then you would grow the babies that way. But I don't think it's necessary. You could do it that way. Um, you could do both. You could totally do both, and you would send the equipment before the people arrive. So that's the way I think it would be done. Over time, people would evolve. The weak would be killed by the strong, and the strong would survive, and the beautiful people will be selected, and they will all mate with each other, and they'll actually humans on Mars would actually be tall. My understanding is because like Mount Olympus is tall because there's no gravity. There's no gravity, which means the beings are taller, which means they're going to have issues with the blood flow, the blood getting to their brain. It's a real problem for tall people. For short people, it doesn't matter. I can go on a roller coaster all day long, but if you're tall, you can't. I can handle the G forces. It's well known. Or you could send. No, no, that doesn't make sense. But people are going to grow tall. So my other thought was, send a lot of short people so that the height in the genetic height won't be a disadvantage in the battle that will occur between the survivors. Okay, so um, that's my idea of how to colonize Mars with people.